This is really a bad movie, and I apologize to Walt Disney himself. I'm sorry.
A time-honoured fairy tale beloved by millions, which spans generations, borders and creeds. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turned out just about everything.
Please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man.
Jennifer Lawrence didn't just throw shade, she lit the entire Disney remake machine on fire.
Well, audiences have responded in their droves. In fact, the trailer has broken records. More than 1 million people have disliked it on YouTube.
In a moment that left a press room dead silent, the Oscar-winning actress reportedly leaned into the microphone, cracked a half smile and said, "Honestly, I miss the magic. Where did it go?"
Because they replaced the dwarves with CGI abominations. They are pretending like Rachel Ziegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film. Somehow Gal Gadot, who's easily one of the top 10 most attractive women on the planet, is some evil, ugly stepmother, which she is not. I don't know how she burst out laughing.
Yeah, none of it works.
And just like that, a dozen executives allegedly stopped breathing. Because what started as a casual Q&A about childhood movies spiraled into a full-on viral moment that insiders are now calling the beginning of Disney's worst press week this year.
I just want to tell you guys about a little incredible movie that just came out, Snow White. Wow. I just got to tell you, best movie I've seen in years, and there have been some really good films lately. Madam Web, Rebel Moon Part 1, that movie, that transgender one with the Mexican drug lord. But Snow White blows them all away. Chat, this movie has everything. Horrifying, CGI, little people, check. A feminist princess who don't need no man, double check. Diddy dance party at the end, double diddy check. All this to say, go see Snow White right now. The new one. Not that old stupid one where the princess gets saved by some good, upstanding guy.
The comment wasn't accidental. Multiple sources say Lawrence had been sitting on her frustration for months, quietly seething as her favorite childhood films were transformed into bloated, CGI-heavy, politically tangled remakes that barely resembled the classics she grew up with.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
But it was the new Snow White that allegedly pushed her over the edge. And she didn't just imply disappointment, she dragged it into the open. "When I was little, I wanted to be swept off my feet," she reportedly said. "Now it feels like the princesses are trying to give TED Talks."
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
Social media exploded. Clips of her quote were clipped, memed, and turned into soundtracks for montage videos of the original 1937 Snow White. Fans called it refreshing, savage, and exactly what needed to be said. Some even claimed Lawrence had spoken for the entire 90s generation in one sentence. Others called it career suicide for daring to criticize Disney so directly.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime, and let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
But Jennifer didn't flinch. She smiled, laughed, and moved on to the next question like she hadn't just triggered an entire corporate meltdown. Inside Disney, the mood turned icy. Executives allegedly scrambled to prepare internal talking points. One source claims a company-wide memo was issued, reminding talent to celebrate the evolution of storytelling.
I am walking into Snow White, 2 p.m., now seating. Let's see how empty it is. I hope it's off the woke we go. I hope. Sound like I hear a couple of people. One, two. Okay. 2.
But the damage was already done. Jennifer Lawrence had said what millions were already thinking, and no amount of PR spin could erase that quote. And the fallout? It's just beginning. The moment Jennifer's clip hit the algorithm, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire that had been flickering ever since the Snow White chaos began. Fans who had simmered in frustration suddenly had a voice.
Remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarves. Okay,
but what do they call them?
Why would they get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it, the disability, like we're a disability group. You just erase that whole image. The argument should have been from Peter Dinklage. There's power of being on TV. There's power of television. And to put 7 people with dwarfism on camera in a major Disney movie, there's still power there. If the story is offensive, change the story. Don't change the character.
And not just any voice. An A-lister, an Oscar winner, a woman who had once been the face of a billion-dollar franchise and still wasn't afraid to say what so many in Hollywood won't, that something has gone horribly wrong with the magic formula. The internet didn't hesitate. Jennifer Lawrence just said what we've all been screaming, one tweet read, racking up over 3 million views in less than a day.
Then they got even crazier and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough, okay?
Comment sections filled with angry rants about how Disney keeps butchering the classics. With Snow White cited as the ultimate example of how far they've strayed. Suddenly, Rachel Ziegler's name was trending again, and not for the right reasons. Clips of her past interviews were dug back up. The infamous, "We didn't write a Snow White that gets saved by a prince" quote resurfaced.
Did the dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, "Why are we doing that? We've hired a Latina actress to be Snow White. That's progressive. But you're going to hire little people to play the dwarfs? That just seems like a step backwards." And then, of course, Disney instantly buckled and said, "Okay, we're going to add magical creatures."
The creepy prince comment? Front and center, TikToks comparing her tone to Jennifer's grace, exploding. Even Rachel's longtime defenders found themselves unusually quiet. One former co-star reportedly told a source, "It's hard to defend someone when J-Law just made the entire room agree with her in 10 seconds flat. Ouch." And while Jennifer never named Ziegler directly, she didn't have to. The implication was nuclear.
These are roles made for actors of my stature. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles because that's not for me.
Right.
And now it's taken away. I don't feel that's right.
Especially when she added in what many believe was a not-so-subtle follow-up dig, "I don't need princesses to be flawless, but I do need to believe they still want to be in the fairy tale." That line? Immediate meltdown. Because that's exactly what critics have accused Ziegler of, making it sound like she didn't even like the story she was cast to tell.
And that is a combination of wokeness and the pandemic. And now you better have a good reason to get people to the theaters, and this ain't it.
Insiders say Disney went into lockdown mode. PR teams began fielding press inquiries within hours. Some were told to redirect interviews. Others were advised to decline comment on Jennifer's statement entirely. One executive allegedly described the situation as a precision strike on their already fragile live-action strategy.
It was essentially a box office dud. Early estimates suggested that they would take in 48 to 58 million in the first weekend. Apparently, it did 43 million in its first weekend.
And the worst part? Lawrence never yelled, never ranted. She didn't need to. She cut deeper with one sentence than months of online backlash ever could. And while the studio fumbled for damage control, fans kept asking the same burning question. If even Jennifer Lawrence thinks the magic is gone, then what exactly are we still doing? Jennifer Lawrence didn't just criticize a movie. She cracked open the entire Disney illusion. And the deeper people looked, the worse it got. Because her remark wasn't just about Snow White. It was about the entire factory, the endless reboots, the moral messaging buried under pixel-perfect lighting, the way Disney has slowly traded wonder for lecture.
These big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after? No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword.
And suddenly, fans started drawing comparisons. Jennifer, who once became a cultural icon by playing a strong female lead, never had to insult older stories to be taken seriously. The Hunger Games was modern. It was empowering, but it still let Katniss fall in love. It still let her be vulnerable. When Jennifer played those roles, she never had to burn the past to justify the present. And that, people began saying, is the difference.
What is this process now where it's like in order to be inclusive, you have to completely destroy storylines, completely destroy franchises? I don't believe in that. I don't think that consumers believe in that either.
Which brings us back, once again, to Rachel Ziegler. Because while Jennifer's one-liner was elegant, Ziegler's commentary from the start had been anything but. It wasn't just the creepy Prince line or the disdainful tone when referencing 1937. It was the pattern. Time and time again, fans felt like she wasn't just reinventing the role, she was mocking it. And when asked about her childhood connection to Snow White, she often seemed disconnected, detached, even bored.
You want to trash that legacy? That company that now Disney has screwed up the last 5 years trying to please a small percentage of minorities in America? Yeah, we're sick of it. So the more you do this, Disney, Iger, Rachel Ziegler, whatever her name is, yes, this is exactly the backlash you're going to get from parents who have kids who are your customers. You're supposed to win parents over. You're talking to kids, the parents pay for the tickets. You have to be a dummy as a marketer to...
I was scared of the original, she once said. I watched it once and never picked it up again. That quote alone sent chills. Not because she was honest, but because it made it sound like she didn't want the role she was given. Jennifer's comment, in contrast, landed like a nostalgic gut punch. It reminded people of why they loved these stories in the first place, why the original Snow White mattered, why so many fans weren't rejecting change, they were rejecting the contempt they felt from the people changing it.
Because guess what? Nobody grew up with that crap, and nobody's all that interested in it. It's very good for people to learn that women need men, and also that men need women. I don't know why this fell out of fashion, and we're not allowed to just say that sort of stuff anymore, but it actually happens to be the truth.
Even Gal Gadot's fans couldn't help but notice the contrast. Gal, who plays the evil queen, kept her comments sharp but diplomatic. She never threw shade. She stuck to the script, promoted the artistry, smiled through the interviews. And while insiders say there was tension behind the scenes, Gadot's silence kept her protected. Ziegler? She did the opposite. Every time she went off script, she handed her critics a fresh soundbite to weaponize. And now, with Jennifer Lawrence stepping into the conversation, Disney's worst fear has come true.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke.
The backlash isn't just coming from YouTubers and anonymous accounts. It's coming from Hollywood royalty. And she didn't throw a fit. She just asked one question. Where's the magic? Inside Disney, the fallout from Jennifer Lawrence's comment was described as a full system scramble. Executives didn't see it coming. No one did. For months, the backlash over Snow White had mostly stayed online, simmering in comment sections and reaction videos. But now, an industry heavyweight had entered the chat, and suddenly, this wasn't just a PR problem, it was an existential one. One source inside the studio claims that within hours of Jennifer's quote going viral, a private meeting was called to review brand perception.
Well, when Disney executives signed off a big budget remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they probably thought it was a very safe bet for a company in dire need of a hit.
According to leaked notes, the topic wasn't just Snow White, it was the entire strategy, the remakes, the messaging, the tone. We've lost the heartbeat, one executive reportedly said. People don't feel the magic anymore. And worse, they think we don't either. And it wasn't just about Ziegler, it was about everything she represented. The idea that the company had stopped honoring its legacy and started treating it like a burden. The feeling that modern updates weren't built with reverence, they were built with attitude. Fans weren't rejecting diversity, they were rejecting disdain. And Lawrence's line, so short, so cutting, made it impossible to ignore. Even more damaging, she didn't make the moment political. She didn't scream about cancel culture or go woke, go broke. She simply asked as a fan, as a woman, as someone who once dreamed of fairy tales, where's the magic? And the internet filled in the rest.
Just looks horrific. It's so out of place. And when you see them dancing next to Rachel Ziegler, who's an actual human actor, it just looks awful. They don't match up. They're deep into the uncanny valley. It is the worst possible choice they could have made. It would have been so much. It would be so much easier if they just used actual dwarf actors. I don't know why they haven't done that.
Disney's internal memo, reportedly sent to senior division heads, warned them to monitor for sentiment spikes and avoid commentary that could be interpreted as defensive or dismissive, which, in corporate terms, translates to keep your mouth shut and pray this dies fast. But it didn't. By the end of the week, articles were popping up everywhere. Headlines like Jennifer Lawrence says what Disney won't and the Hunger Games star just blew up the fairy tale were generating millions of clicks. Podcasts picked it up, radio hosts dissected it, even morning talk shows featured it in their entertainment segments. All because one actress with nothing to gain decided to say what every executive was too scared to admit. And while Rachel Ziegler stayed silent, Disney braced for impact. Because when someone like Jennifer Lawrence questions your magic, it's not just a jab, it's a reckoning. And no amount of musical numbers or reshoots can fix that kind of broken spell. Jennifer Lawrence didn't just ruffle feathers, she tapped into something deeper, something raw. Fans weren't just applauding her for speaking out, they were thanking her for saying what they hadn't been able to articulate. Because this wasn't about just Snow White anymore. It was about all of it. The Little Mermaid, Peter Pan and Wendy, Mulan. Movie after movie that promised to honor the classics, but instead felt like glossy lectures wrapped in nostalgia-colored cellophane.
Original description of Snow White's skin in the book is as white as snow.
Yeah.
Lips as red as blood, hair as black as ebony. Couldn't be clearer.
They missed the mark there. They should have casted me.
The response online was immediate and visceral. She said what Disney needed to hear, read one viral post. I don't need a princess to punch a dragon. I need her to make me believe in something again. TikTok flooded with emotional edits of old Disney films, overlaying Jennifer's quote with classic scenes from Belle dancing in the ballroom, Ariel reaching for the surface, Cinderella running from the palace. Nostalgia was surging, and not in Disney's favor, because the truth? Fans didn't want to go backward. They just didn't want to be talked down to. They didn't want to feel like they were wrong for loving what made them dream as kids. Jennifer's words cracked that open, and it hit Disney right in the heart of their brand. When even your most loyal audience starts asking if you remember how to tell stories, you've already lost them. And that's the part the executives didn't prepare for. They were ready for YouTube backlash. They were ready for political pundits. But they weren't ready for a generational voice of authenticity to stand up and say, this doesn't feel like it's for us anymore. And that's what Jennifer Lawrence did. She made it okay to say that something was missing, not because people hated progress, but because they missed the magic. And that magic isn't just about fairy godmothers and princes. It's about storytelling that stirs something in your chest, that ache, that spark. The belief that a simple story can carry you somewhere far, far away. That's what people felt had been missing, and Jennifer put it into words. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler became the face of the divide. Not by choice, maybe not even fairly, but undeniably. Every clip, every tweet, every sigh she gave during interviews got replayed next to Jennifer's soft-spoken truth bomb. And the contrast couldn't have been clearer, because one of them made people remember why they loved Disney, and the other made them question if Disney still loved them back. Hollywood doesn't move until someone gives it permission. And with just a handful of words, Jennifer Lawrence did exactly that. She gave actors, directors, and even critics permission to speak up, to stop pretending that every remake dripping in studio polish and progressive buzzwords is automatically sacred. And the response behind the scenes? It's been louder than most would ever dare admit publicly. A handful of screenwriters, speaking off the record, say they've been privately fuming for years, forced to include themes and lines they knew didn't fit, all because some executive wanted to chase a headline instead of a heartbeat.
I don't know why in order to make a film more progressive, the woman can't have a focus on love or finding true love. They almost act like it's something to make fun of. When even in the original cartoon, she sings one song about finding her true love, the prince is in the movie for like a minute. Snow White wanted to find true love. That's fine, most of us do. She didn't really set out to be a leader. Not all of us do. Sometimes you just want to be in the middle of a forest baking pies. And some of us want to be saved by a prince. I know I do.
Even he gets it. We just want to be out in the forest baking pies. We want to watch a movie sometimes that shows a nice, happy ending, and it's okay.
You can feel it in the notes, one writer said. It's like they're scared to tell a real story, so they try to say everything all at once and end up saying nothing at all. A few directors have started quietly distancing themselves from legacy reboots altogether. One prominent filmmaker reportedly dropped out of a planned reimagining of Hercules just days after Jennifer's remarks made headlines. Their reason? We're not making movies anymore. We're doing brand maintenance. Even other actors are starting to shift their tone. One rising star, who had been cast in a different Disney remake set for 2026, has allegedly asked their team to renegotiate press obligations, specifically around legacy commentary. They don't want to end up like Rachel, an insider said. Bluntly, they saw what happens when you say the wrong thing. And just like that, Rachel Zegler's name has become a warning.
I'm talking about this video, but you know what pisses me off about it? Like, obviously it's annoying that they're changing the whole story. They didn't cast any dwarf. What makes me so annoyed is how smug they are about it. Like, I'm just so sick of celebrities and people with fame and money and power. Like, they're just in a constant circle jerk with each other all the time. And we're just like forced to participate in it. I want fantasy. I don't want more, you need to work and you need to be a leader. And like, I don't want to do any of those things. I want my Prince Charming. I want him to kiss me on the lips and I want him to think I'm the most beautiful girl in the world.
It's not fair. Not entirely. Zegler wasn't the screenwriter. She didn't direct Snow White, but she became the loudest voice attached to it. The one who mocked the original. The one who acted as if the role she'd been gifted was beneath her. Whether that was her intent or not, it's how it came across. And when Jennifer Lawrence dropped her quote, it was like she put the final punctuation on a sentence Zegler had been writing for months. Even critics have begun changing their tone. Reviews that once treaded carefully around Disney's modern updates are suddenly sharper, more candid. One outlet called the latest wave of live-action films soulless, sterilized theater. Another headline read, "When did Disney forget how to tell a story?" That kind of critique would have been unthinkable a year ago. Now, it's trending because Jennifer Lawrence didn't cancel anyone. She didn't shout, lecture, or demand. She just looked around, watched it all unfold, and asked the question that sliced through the silence. Where's the magic? Inside Disney's highest offices, the question isn't whether Jennifer Lawrence was out of line. It's how the hell they didn't see this coming. According to two insiders, the conversation following her remarks was less about offense and more about recognition. Because deep down, everyone knew she was right. They just didn't want to be the first to say it.
Somebody said, yes, I need the romance. I feel like it's pushing career mode on us too. I work every day. I need the romance to escape. Another person said, so we're all in agreement that none of us are watching this movie. Somebody else said, if the writers/actors strike takes anything away, I hope that it is this movie. Someone else said, let Snow White be a woman who yearns for love and leads with kindness. That's the bare minimum, literally. Like, do whatever else you want with the movie, just keep those values. Again, the bare minimum. Somebody else said, yes, I'm tired of rescuing myself, being my own best friend. I want to know I'm loved and cherished. I want love stories. Like, that's so sad that that's something that women are asking for in film and TV. I mean, I know what you guys are gonna say, it's their own fault, it's feminism, which it is. Third and fourth wave feminism, they did that. But you know what? A lot of women are tired. A lot of women did not ask for this, just like myself.
Disney has spent the last decade turning its crown jewels into sleek, risk-averse updates. For a while, it worked. Beauty and the Beast made bank. The Lion King cashed in. But then came the fatigue, the sameness, the creeping realization that the studio had traded magic for mimicry. And when Snow White stumbled, carrying all the weight of controversy, backlash, and corporate overcorrection, it wasn't just a flop. It was a mirror, one the company couldn't avoid any longer. Jennifer's question didn't just expose that mirror. It forced Disney to look, not at Rachel Ziegler, not even at Snow White, but at themselves, at the way they've tried to retrofit. Wonder into a focus-tested formula that nobody really believes in anymore. And the scariest part? The audience noticed. Market research reportedly shows that trust in Disney's storytelling has declined among core demographics, families, nostalgic millennials, even international audiences who once viewed the brand as untouchable. When audiences hear live-action remake now, they don't think innovation. They think disappointment. That shift didn't happen overnight, but Jennifer's quote, it threw a spotlight on it. Executives are reportedly reviewing development slates, putting the brakes on riskier reimaginings. One source confirmed that at least 2 in-progress remakes have been sent back for thematic reevaluation, and another, an unannounced update to a beloved 90s property, has been paused indefinitely. Not because of Jennifer's words alone, but because those words resonated, and when words resonate, money moves. Some in the boardroom want to double down, keep pushing forward. It's not our job to make people comfortable, one exec reportedly said, but others, especially those focused on brand integrity, are asking tougher questions. Who is our audience now? What do they actually want? And if Jennifer Lawrence, an actress with zero stake in this fight, can get standing ovations for pointing out the obvious, then maybe it's time we stop pretending the fairy dust hasn't settled, because there's a difference between updating a story and losing its soul. And if Disney doesn't fix that fast, they won't just lose a few billion at the box office. They'll lose something money can't buy, the magic. The truth is, Jennifer Lawrence didn't just speak to Disney, she spoke for the fans. For the kids who once clutched VHS tapes like treasure, for the teens who belted out part of your world into hairbrushes, for the adults who still feel that lump in their throat when they hear a certain melody and remember who they were when they first believed in magic. Her words weren't calculated, they were instinct. And maybe that's why they landed harder than any studio campaign ever could, because fans have been holding back for years. They wanted to be patient. They wanted to believe that the changes were being made with care, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like the soul of the stories was being stripped out, and all that remained were empty platitudes disguised as empowerment. And when they tried to say it, they were dismissed, labeled as regressive or worse, haters.
Snow White starring Rachel Ziegler opened to a dismal $43 million, snagging the title of the lowest debut weekend for any Disney live-action remake, beating 2019's Dumbo.
Jennifer changed that. Suddenly, it was okay to say this doesn't feel like Disney anymore. Suddenly, calling for heart and wonder wasn't considered childish. It was honest. And as fans poured into comment sections, forums, podcasts, and group chats, one thing became clear. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't about wokeness. It was about belonging, about whether these new versions of the classics still welcomed the people who loved them first. And Rachel Ziegler, fairly or not, became the symbol of that disconnect. Her performance wasn't the issue. It was her posture, her tone, the way she spoke about the story that fans cherished. To some, it felt like she resented the role. To others, it felt like she was using it to prove a point instead of tell a tale. And every time she defended herself, the gap grew wider. Jennifer, on the other hand, bridged that gap with a whisper. No condescension, no lectures, just nostalgia, just longing. And that single sentence, "Where's the magic?" rang out like a bell through a kingdom that had gone quiet. Now the fans have picked up the sound. They're reposting vintage clips, rewatching original films, sharing memories, remembering what it felt like before the cynicism, before the hashtags, before the algorithms turned childhood into content. They're not rejecting progress. They're asking that it be wrapped in wonder, not warnings. They're not asking for princesses to go back to waiting in towers. They're just asking to believe in the story again. And thanks to Jennifer, it feels like they finally have permission to say that out loud. Jennifer Lawrence didn't plan to become the voice of a generation's frustration. But that's what happens when someone honest walks into a room full of rehearsed answers. She didn't launch a campaign. She didn't call for a boycott. She didn't need to. All she did was say what most people had been too afraid or too exhausted to admit. And that's what made it powerful. Because Jennifer isn't some bitter outsider throwing stones. She's Jennifer Lawrence, the same actress who brought Katniss Everdeen to life, who stood at the front lines of modern cinema's shift toward female-driven storytelling. She's been the strong heroine, the quiet romantic, the action lead. The awards darling. She's done it all. So when she says something's missing, people listen. Not because she wants attention, but because she doesn't need it. And that's why Disney can't ignore this moment. Industry insiders are already calling Jennifer's comment a watershed moment for the remake era. Not because it marked the beginning of a boycott, but because it might have signaled the beginning of the end for the current formula.
I'm so disappointed in Disney. And I'm not saying this as a moviegoer. I'm not saying this as someone who's railing against DEI. I'm saying this as a stock owner in the company of Disney.
You can't sell magic with spreadsheets. You can't bottle wonder in a politically scrubbed script. And when one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood quietly calls you out, you don't clap back. You start rewriting everything. At least that's what the smart executives are thinking. The more stubborn ones are already trying to paint Jennifer's remarks as taken out of context. But the internet isn't buying it, because context isn't what made her statement explode. Clarity did. It wasn't vague. It wasn't mean. It was true. And in an industry drowning in PR fluff, truth is the loudest thing anyone can say. So what happens now? Well, for starters, every actor in a legacy remake is being handed new talking points. Every future director is being told to honor the original. And every executive is being reminded that the audience isn't stupid. They're sentimental. They don't need things to stay the same, but they do need to feel like the storytellers care as much as they do. And Jennifer Lawrence? She'll keep doing what she always does, taking roles she believes in, skipping the noise, and occasionally, when the moment calls for it, saying the one thing no one else in the room is brave enough to say. Because when someone like her asks, "Where's the magic?" it's not a complaint. It's a call to remember what storytelling was supposed to be all along. So here we are. One quote, one actress, one perfectly timed question. And the conversation around Disney's future has shifted entirely. It wasn't Rachel Ziegler's latest post. It wasn't another studio statement. It wasn't even the release of a new trailer. It was one moment of honesty from someone who had nothing to lose and nothing to prove. Jennifer Lawrence didn't rant. She didn't scold. She just asked what so many of us were already thinking. Where's the magic? And maybe that's what made it hit so hard. Because we weren't hearing it from a critic. We weren't hearing it from a Twitter thread or a YouTube rant. We were hearing it from someone who believed in it too. Someone who remembers what it felt like to fall in love with a story. Not because it was edgy or updated or revolutionary, but because it was beautiful. Because it made her feel something. That feeling, it's what Disney was built on. Not marketing, not politics, not test groups or press tours, just stories that made kids believe, made parents cry, made everyone in the theater feel like, for a moment, anything was possible. And if they've lost sight of that, Jennifer's words were a reminder. The audience hasn't. Maybe this is the wake-up call they needed. Not to go backward, not to pretend we're still living in 1937, but to rediscover the magic that made these stories matter in the first place. Not just to modernize the princess, but to protect the wonder. Because if the audience has to choose between a film that lectures and a film that enchants, they'll always pick the one that makes them feel something. And that's the lesson Jennifer Lawrence just handed the entire entertainment industry on a silver platter. Now it's up to Disney to listen. But what do you think? Did Jennifer Lawrence just say what we've all been feeling? Is the magic really gone from Disney's remakes? Or can it still be rediscovered with the right story, the right cast, and the right heart? Let us know in the comments below. Tap that like button if you appreciate voices that speak truth in a sea of spin. And don't forget to subscribe for more honest, no-fluff deep dives into Hollywood's biggest shakeups. And when you're ready for another untold story that's been hiding just beneath the headlines, the next video on your screen is waiting.